Well, we are honored to have back with us today Dr. Jerome Corsi, and we've had him before, and what an honor to get him, because I'm sure his time is very valuable and everybody's after him. So he's giving us a couple of moments today to talk about, well, his new book, Bad Samaritans, the ACLU's relentless campaign to erase faith from the public square. There's a picture of it there on the screen, put out by Thomas Nelson. Let me encourage you to check it out and get a copy of this, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, wherever. As you know, he also was the best-selling author of The Abomination, and he is quite prolific in his writings, and we are delighted and honored to have Dr. Corsi with us today. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Perry. It's good to be back with you. Thank you.
What prompted this book in your heart?
Well, I feel like we are entering into a completely secular society. God is not permitted in the public schools or the public squares. We're engaging in a series of practices sexually and abandoning traditional marriage. It's going to make paganism in the ancient world look moderate by comparison. And the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, back to its founding in the 1920s, it was founded by a group of radical socialists and communists, have had this agenda and have been very successful in arguing against God, having a war on God, and a war on traditional marriage. I mean, if you want to prepare America to become socialist, the two things you have to attack are God, the Judeo-Christian faith. Largely, Marx said, religion's the opiate of the people, and you've got to attack the family, because the family raises God-believing children who believe in individual initiative. I mean, even as you see on MSNBC this past week, the socialist view is that a collective raises the child. A collective is collectivism is the socialist ideal and is completely opposed to traditional family structures.
Why do you think they've been so successful, Dr. Corsi? I mean, in spite of the opposition, and in spite of the faith community still being fairly strong and active, we haven't been able to stop them.
Well, I think they've been very clever in how they've argued. If you take a look even back at the Scopes monkey trial, 1925, which kind of set the mold, the ACLU went and found a test case. I mean, the John Scopes not even teaching evolution. The whole case evolved because Tennessee law prohibited the teaching of evolution in 1925 in the schools, and the ACLU found this test case. They brought in Clarence Darrow, a Chicago slick lawyer, against Williams Jennings Bryan, a Democratic politician who had run for president 3 times and was a God-fearing, Bible-reading politician. And the trial was made to be science and the advancement of human beings and the future versus this old, stupid religion, prejudice, mumbling, trying to read the Bible to explain a scientific fact. And the ridicule was the beginning of the public relations campaign the ACLU has raised, and waged against God and against religion, ignoring intelligent design or creationism. I mean, it always amuses me when I see the scientists coming up with the Big Bang Theory, and it sure sounds an awfully lot like Genesis, and God said, "Let there be light."
Yeah, right.
You mentioned that to the ACLU, or you mentioned this to the atheists who have backed the ACLU, and you're going right at the heart of their public relations campaign, which is to make believers, evangelicals in particular, to paint them as stupid people. And anybody who believes in religion, there's something wrong with you because you're not sufficiently educated to take on the rational scientific advancement. Well, I don't see that science has produced us all this much. Without God, it's going to produce us nothing but a moral vacuum, and we will ultimately lose our freedoms. This is what Thomas Jefferson and the founders said. A society founded on Judeo-Christian principles that loses God will ultimately lose its freedoms.
Right.
And that's, I think, my research, my thinking about the issue, what I feel in my heart is that that's right. That Thomas Jefferson's definition that our freedoms are inalienable rights given by God, that will soon go away if the rights that we share are only to be enjoyed because they're bestowed upon us or taken away at the whim of the state.
All right, there's a couple things here. First of all, you may have seen the article now that has come out exposing the fact that in some of the proposed, if not already instituted, training manuals in the military will show that evangelicals and Catholics are considered extremists, which is another attack against religion. And then you have a president who calls himself a Christian, but every bit of his administration and policy is anti-religion and anti-God. And yet there doesn't seem to be a pushback.
Well, again, judging President Obama, I don't know what's in his heart. You can only judge by, the fruit of the tree. Mm-hmm. Everything I see is anti-God, certainly much more pro-Muslim. Obama has said that in Cairo that he'd experienced Islam on 3 continents. He made a big point of this. He was raised in Islam. And my book argues, the Bad Samaritans, that all religions, including Islam, are open in America. This was the beauty of what America had designed. Of course, it predicated on Islam as other religions remaining tolerant and not trying to exclude the other religions. But Thomas Jefferson meant for, this whole separation of church and state is nowhere in the Constitution. It's nowhere in the First Amendment. It was in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury, Connecticut Baptist congregation,
right,
to assure them that the government was not going to shut down their religion. The First Amendment creates an affirmative responsibility for government. The fear was the government would establish a religion like the British had established the Anglican Church. So the founders wanted the public square, public schools, anything to do with the open to be open to all religions, to be openly professed. I mean, the way the ACLU's got it, the way the Obama administration and Homeland Security are tending, you're going to have to read your Bible in your closet with the lights off and a flashlight.
Has the ACLU taken that letter to the Baptist Church? Of course, they've elevated it to make it a First Amendment issue, but they really redefined the First Amendment by taking that letter.
That's correct. Instead of being a freedom of religion, it's a freedom from religion. And they've tried to read the First Amendment's admonition that we have free expression as saying, like, give unto Caesar what's Caesar, unto God's what's God's. Well, the First Amendment doesn't say that. Our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington took the oath of office at the Federal Building in downtown on Wall Street in New York, and then he walked up to St. Paul's and prayed. That's the prayer and the belief in God. The Judeo-Christian tradition was at the heart of the way our founding fathers not only believed society should be run, but government should be run. God was not excluded from government from the founding fathers. It was included. And God excluded from the public schools is a complete perversion. It's the opposite of the freedom of religion, free expression of religion that our founders intended. This is an abomination that the ACLU has imposed on us by this misinterpretation of Jefferson's letter and trying to convince the American people that the First Amendment says church and state should be separated. First Amendment says no such thing.
All right. Before we take a break, there's, as a result of all of this pushback, they continue to win some things. And as you know, we've been seeing them go after all the crosses in the public square. But incrementally, they seem to be adding to their list of successes.
Correct.
And why don't you hold on to that, because I'm going to ask you to maybe give us a little bit of a list of that when we come back. We're talking to Dr. Jerome Corsi, and here's his new book. There's a picture of it there on the screen. Let me encourage you to get a copy of it, put out by Thomas Nelson. Check it out. Evangel, Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. The Bad Samaritan, the ACLU's relentless campaign to erase faith from the public square. We'll be right back with Dr. Corsi. We are back with our good friend Dr. Jerome Corsi. He's authored a book called Bad Samaritans, the ACLU's relentless campaign to erase faith from the public square. There's a picture there on the screen. Let me encourage you to get a copy of this and read it. He's already a best-selling author, and we are honored to have a few minutes of his time here today. Dr. Corsi, as we were going into the break, we talked about some of the accomplishments that the ACLU has already made. And of course, we have seen across the country their various attempts to take down public crosses. What have they won that's been significant?
Well, I mean, certainly prayer in school is eliminated. You can't even, if a child brought in a Valentine that said, "Jesus loves me," there'd be a lot of furor over that. A coach that dared to pray in a public school before a football game would probably lose his job. It'd be, again, anything in the public square, trying to put a nativity scene in the public square or 10 Commandments. The ACLU has won these battles and convinced Americans that church and state should be separated, which is not what the Constitution says.
Mm-hmm.
And now the agenda is expanding. I mean, same-sex marriage is not enough for the ACLU. They're in court supporting pedophilia, representing cases from the North American Boy-Man Love Association. They are advancing the campaign not only for pornography, but very aggressive pornography under free speech to be put in the libraries where children can access it, and now arguing for child pornography to be accepted. Instead of just same-sex marriage, again, we're going for pedophilia. We're going for every form of kind of different sexual variation you can imagine. And instead of just supporting abortion, the ACLU is now also supporting euthanasia. I mean, attacks on the Boy Scouts, making sure the Boy Scouts have gays in the Boy Scouts. I mean, anything that represents family, that is traditional values, purity, and no pornography or no profanity. These are the kinds of cases where the ACLU is going to be in there arguing for sexual variations to be the same as traditional marriage, arguing for euthanasia and abortion on demand. I mean, any attack on the family, which I'm arguing goes back to the roots and the purpose of the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. But I call them bad Samaritans because instead of the Good Samaritan helping someone ailing by the side of the road, the ACLU, I'm saying, is the bad Samaritan seeing Jesus Christ walking down the road, and the American Civil Liberties Union accosts Jesus, beats him to within an inch of his life, and leaves him for dead.
Well, do you think our national motto is in their crosshairs from taking it out of the Pledge of Allegiance? I've had the opportunity to be in the House of Representatives on many occasions, but one of the most honorable ones was to see a State of the Union address. And it's amazing to me, just above where the president gives his speech, etched in about 5.5, 6 feet of marble, is our national motto, "In God We Trust." Do you think that could be covered up someday?
Yes, I think the ACLU would attack that, attack under God and the Pledge of Allegiance. How about all the military cemeteries all over the world, but taking out the crosses and the Stars of David? I mean, these are, again, the ACLU's secular agenda is to remove God. And if we lose God, and the Judeo-Christian God is the center of our values, that's the main attack. I mean, the ACLU will also support Islam in cases where they would never support Judeo or Christian values. And I'm not attacking Islam. I'm saying that Islam is one of the religions, all religions should be accepted, including Islam, under the First Amendment, with full expression of the public square. What I'm objecting to is that the ACLU politically uses Islam as a club against Judeo-Christians' beliefs, and an attempt to get the Judeo-Christian God with discrimination against the Judeo-Christian God uniquely out of the public square.
All right, now we have the Alliance Defense Fund, the ACLJ. We got other groups now that are popping up, beginning to push back. Do you see any hope in this?
Yes, in fact, I write extensively about this. I end the book with pointing out that the ACLU is extremely well funded. It's a juggernaut, and it's now engaging in tactics I would consider extortion. your community does not agree to what the ACLU wants, they'll sue you and press for attorney's fees. I mean, the case in Alabama where they took out the Ten Commandments famously away from the Judge Ray Moore's courthouse, the ACLU was awarded $500,000. And so it's very profitable for the ACLU. We as Christians, Jews, as believers in the traditional values of America have to fund groups like the Alliance Defending Freedom, the American Center for Law and Justice, Pacific Justice Institute, Liberty Institute, there's many of them, to put Christian and Jewish lawyers believing in the traditional values of America into courts arguing for God. Mm-hmm. God's got to have an advocate. The arguments, the ACLU comes in and argues abortion under Roe v. Wade and this hypothecated idea of privacy. Well, I mean, let's research and develop an idea of personhood and make it a legal theory and counter the ACLU. In every case, we can find our own test cases to push back. I mean, God needs an advocate in the courts. Otherwise, we're going to lose Judeo-Christian beliefs. We're going to lose our ability to practice free expression of religion. If that's the beginning of us going down the road to tyranny and experiencing this bizarre agenda of morals and sex behavior that the ACLU advocates, and death agenda, abortion, euthanasia. These are all values contrary to the Judeo-Christian beliefs. We're returning to a paganism that's been extinguished from the world for almost 1,500, 2,000 years.
As a broadcaster, I'm very concerned. Heads up, I head up a radio and television and internet network, and I'm now seeing again the hate crime legislation being proposed coming at us. I mean, if they get my microphone, they'll get the pulpit, won't they?
Well, yes, and there's groups out there funded by George Soros who follow everything said on Christian radio and try to paint it in the worst possible light every time anyone says anything they can in any way find objectionable. And these groups are trying to advance the idea that if a pastor dares to speak out against a sexual practice that the pastor believes is antithetical to Scripture or to fundamental religious principles of Judeo-Christian beliefs, that pastor is going to be accused of a hate crime. Mm-hmm. Not only removed from the pulpit, but maybe even prosecuted or fined for having pursued those beliefs publicly. Because that's the extent of hate crimes. That's what hate crimes means. That's what hate speech means.
Why do you think there hasn't been a greater pushback from the faith community?
Well, I think the faith community needs to be aware of the threat. And I think one of the reasons I wrote this book, The Bad Samaritan, is to make it clear that the ACLU is extremely well funded. They've been on this anti-God, anti-family agenda, under the guise of they're defending our civil liberties.
Yeah, right.
Destroying our civil liberties under the guise of defending them. That's the irony. They're perverting the meaning of the First Amendment in order to destroy it and telling us that they're fighting for our liberties. This lie, this public relations gimmick, is one that the communists on the left in the 50s decided that they weren't going to advance anywhere by outwardly being communists, but by becoming, Democrats with a small d and pursuing a liberal agenda, they could accomplish everything that they were trying to accomplish as communists and socialists. And it's a lie. Well, we've got to expose that lie. We've got to make people understand that we're within an inch of losing our ability to profess belief in God.
Dr. Corsi, it appears we have gone past pluralism. It just seems to be an all-out attack at Christianity.
Precisely. And Judeo-Christianity. Let's conclude.
Yeah, right.
The tradition of there being one God, the tradition of beliefs that come out of the Torah and the Bible, the New Testament and Old Testament.
Right.
That tradition is what is being attacked by the left. And it's being attacked. Once the left wins this, there won't be pluralism. You won't be allowed to. It'll be now fascism. It'll be imposed on you that you will be hate crime, you'll be chased down, you'll be hunted, you'll be imprisoned, you'll be fined. This is the problem with the left. If you don't accept their godless agenda, if you dare profess belief in Jesus Christ, you'll be considered not only a fool, but a dangerous radical.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so antithetical to what our founding fathers wanted to achieve and bestowed on us. They bestowed on us freedoms. Our founding fathers admonished us, if you lose the ability to believe in Jesus Christ and the Judeo-Christian religion, you are going to lose your freedoms totally. That's what's at risk here.
Well, let me encourage our viewers and listeners. It's called Bad Samaritans. That's about the ACLU, and it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning, and this is a must-read. The Bad Samaritan, the ACL's relentless campaign to erase faith from the public square. We've seen the attacks on public crosses. We've seen the attacks on prayer in school and all of these other things, and they have incrementally been gaining on this thing, and now it just seems to be an all-out war. So, Dr. Corsi, thank you for your passion. I sense in your heart what's in my heart, and there's a brokenness about what's happened to our beloved country.
Well, I fear for America. I fear for our freedoms. I fear for our children and future generations. We were bestowed a legacy of freedom.
Right.
It was predicated on belief in God. And if we abandon that, if we allow that to be taken away by a slick PR job done by like the ACLU, we're abandoning our heritage. And I do feel a great heaviness of heart that it's so close to happening.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for your passion. Keep up the good work. We'll have you back often.
Thank you, Perry. Great honor and privilege to be with you again. Thank you.
All right. God bless you.